Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very well-established entrepreneur who's done many startups from Seattle, USA, Mr. Shirish Nadkarni. Shirish, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Thank you. Shirish is the founder of Livemocha and TeamOn Systems. He's a quintessential entrepreneur with several successful exits, and he's an author of a book titled From Startup to Exit, an insider's guide to launching and scaling your tech business. So Shirish, today let's talk about startup and entrepreneurship, and we'll talk about your book as well. Let's start with why don't you tell me a little bit about some of your successful exits?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I founded two companies. One was called TeamOn Systems, which was an early pioneer in mobile email during the early days of BlackBerry. And the company was acquired in 2002 by BlackBerry. And the technology we built became known as BlackBerry Internet Email, which had about 50 million users at its peak. Second company was a company called Livemocha. It was founded in 2007, and we basically pioneered the notion of social language learning, where you could learn from other native speakers around the world. And it was acquired by Rosetta Stone in 2012.
Okay. And are you working on a new startup these days?
No, not anymore. But I do advise a number of startups. There's a company I advised recently called Ally that was acquired by Microsoft very recently. So I invest and advise startups.
Terrific. So I'm going to ask you several questions on startups and entrepreneurship, Shirish, because a very large number of people who listen and view our show are startup entrepreneurs. So let me start by asking you that what is the advantage of having a partner versus going solo?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Most VCs will not actually fund you if you're going solo. The only time they might fund you if you're a successful entrepreneur already. But I've had the good fortune of working with two co-founders for TeamOn Systems and with Livemocha. And they brought the technical aspects. So they were the CTO of the company. But they were incredibly valuable for me in terms of developing our business strategy. So not only were they great technologists, but they had an amazing business mind as well. And as I thought about strategy and pricing and other business decisions, they were a really important a partner in helping me make the right decisions. It's very lonely at the top, and oftentimes you have to reach difficult decisions. But having co-founders can really help you in hopefully arriving at the right decision for your company.
Very interesting. And I'd love to get your perspective, given the fact that you've had two successful exits and you continue to advise and fund so many startups. What is your reason in some of the basic mistakes a lot of startup entrepreneurs make?
I would say, the classic mistake that founders make is one, not doing enough research to really understand the pain point that they're trying to address. Oftentimes, companies are started by technologies who are in love with technology, and they believe that the solution that they're building has a problem that they're solving. And maybe it's a problem, but it may not be the most important problem for your customers. And so that can lead to very long sales cycles because it's not top of mind for them. The other mistake that they make is not spending enough time on achieving product market fit. Basically iterating on the product till they really make sure that it's addressing the right problem and that you have the right solution. And they start instead marketing and spending money on marketing when they haven't really achieved what I call as product market fit.
Okay.
So those are probably two of the main mistakes that I see founders making.
Very interesting. And another question that a lot of startup entrepreneurs ask me, and I'm going to ask you, at what stage should a startup start to scale up?
As soon as you have achieved product market fit, and I talk about in my book, how do you know that you have achieved product market fit? Well, you can track certain number of metrics. If your user growth, if you're a consumer startup, if you can see yourself getting to 100,000 users in the next few months, if your retention is high, those are some of the factors that go into determining whether you have product market fit. And secondly, that you have perfected the sales motion, that how to acquire customers, in a manner that is profitable for the company. Once you know that, then you are in a position to now just simply, pour in money, and you can start acquiring customers at a rapid, pace.
Interesting. There's another question which seems to worry or get people concerned is, when should one raise money? I hear two different schools of thought. One is bootstrap as long as you can, and the other is raise money as soon as it's available. I'd love to get your perspective.
Yeah, that's a great question. Generally, I advise founders to bootstrap until they have some customer traction, where they can show that they have at least 2 or 3 customers who are using their product, and that the customers are really enthusiastic about it. At that point, you are in a pretty good position to go to investors and say, hey, I have a couple of customers. They don't have to be necessarily revenue generating. Obviously, if they're revenue generating, that's even better. But if they can really validate that you have achieved product market fit, that's the point at which you should go ahead and raise funding. Because if you continue to bootstrap for too long, then you run the risk that you're not growing, fast enough, that you're not putting enough money to grow the company fast enough. And then you might lose out to competitors who are, who get ahead of you by raising, funding.
And, you are living and working in the most exciting belt, which is in and around the Bay Area.
Yes.
A lot of countries have spoken about building a Bay Area in their own countries, etc. But I wanted to ask you, what makes Silicon Valley such an exciting place for startups?
Yeah, a number of factors. One, you have a number of universities like Stanford University and University of Berkeley, 2 of the top engineering schools and MBA, schools in Silicon Valley. You had, basically a critical mass of technology companies. So there's a lot of tech talent. And then finally, you have the venture capital infrastructure. So a lot of the top VC firms are located in the Bay Area. And so, a lot of companies have relocated, like, the founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, started his company at Harvard, but eventually decided to move to the Bay Area. Same thing with Dropbox and other companies that, migrated from Seattle to the Bay Area because of that infrastructure of talent, universities and VCs who are, readily available for funding startups.
Terrific. So, Shirish, I'm now going to move to the next segment, which is to talk to you about your role as an angel investor. My first question to you is, what are some of the key metrics you look for before you make an investment?
A couple of factors I look at. One is the founding team. Is this a A+ team? Do they have strong expertise? Do they understand their industry really well? And secondly, what I look for is, as I mentioned earlier, is again, product market fit. Do they have traction with customers who are willing to say really good things about the company? And most importantly, I look for strong metrics in terms of retention. If you're acquiring customers and you're retaining them really well, then that's a really good sign for me that the product is resonating with customers. So those are some of the factors I look at in deciding whether to invest on. And obviously, there are many other factors such as how big the opportunity is. Are they riding some major technology trend? Those are all the factors I look at. But the first few are the ones I focus on.
Okay. And as an angel investor, how involved do you get in the operations or governance of the company?
It depends on the company. I typically invest in companies where I feel I can add value. And so, I'll either advise them from time to time, or I will take on a formal advisory role and spend more time with the company. But I don't invest for the sake of investing. I invest typically so that I can add value and really help the companies move their mission forward.
Okay. And at what stage do you look for an exit?
No, it really depends on the company. It depends on how, it can come as quickly as, in 2 or 3 years, or it can take 7, 8 years, for the company to exit. So it really depends on, how hot the market is, how fast the company is growing. I mentioned the example of Ally, which was acquired by Microsoft. I mean, they were growing very, very rapidly, and they could have gone IPO at certain stage, but they found a good opportunity in terms of exit with Microsoft and decided to go down that path. So it really depends on company to company, at what point the founders want to exit, and how they see the opportunity ahead of them.
Okay. And one more question before I move to your book. Most angel investors I have spoken to, including some investments that I have made, there are always some ones that got away.
Yes.
Do you have anyone that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, absolutely. There's a company here in Seattle called Seekout. They are in the HR tech business. And I had an opportunity to invest in them, but at that time I was looking to potentially do another startup. So I didn't have the funds to really invest at that point. But the company was founded by some really smart individuals, and I should have taken that bet at that point. Now they are a unicorn. The valuation is worth over $1 billion. But
Absolutely.
These things happen, and you learn from these mistakes, and you hopefully don't make the same mistake again.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you completely. Yeah. So Shirish, now let's move to your book. You've got a book titled From Startup to Exit, an insider's guide to launching and scaling your tech business.
Yes.
First, tell me, is this book available on Amazon?
Yes, it's available on Amazon. It's available in the US. It's available in India. Okay. Essentially everywhere where books are sold.
Wonderful. So tell me a little bit about this book and your hypothesis.
So the objective behind the book is to really make many more startups successful. As you may have heard, 9 out of startups fail, but the one startup that succeeds can change the world, as you have seen with Microsoft and Amazon and Google, etc. In fact, out of the top 10 companies by valuation, 9 of them are tech companies. So my goal with this book is to really change that equation. If I can make it so that 2 out of 10 companies succeed instead of 1 out of 10, if I can double that number, that could have a fairly significant impact on the economy.
Correct.
And so my goal is to really help startup founders get up to speed very quickly and avoid the kinds of mistakes that I've seen others make, etc., and improve their chances of success.
So, Shirish, you spoke a little while earlier about the product market fit.
Yes.
I'd love to get some more tips from you for our viewers and listeners.
Yeah. So first of all, to achieve product market fit, you really need to focus on the problem. You need to spend a lot of time talking to customers, really understanding what are their top 2 or 3 problems. And if the problem that you're addressing is not one of the top 2 or 3 problems, that's where you need to pivot immediately and say, tell me more about the top 2 or 3 problems, and let's figure out what problems these are, why you're having them, how you're solving those problems today. And if you can figure out, hey, there's a solution I can build that can solve that problem better than their existing solution, then there's an opportunity to create a product.
Okay.
And then you need to build your product, build an MVP, give it to some customers to try out and see what kind of reaction you get from your customers. Are they all over you to say, hey, please add this feature, please add that feature, when can I expand beyond beta, etc. If you're getting that kind of signal from the customers, then you know that you are achieving product market fit. But again, I discuss those some of the a few tips. I discussed a lot more detail in my book.
Sure, thank you. So I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to check out your book on Amazon. Shirish, I've got time for one more question.
Sure.
And it comes back to entrepreneurship and startups.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to a young entrepreneur or a startup entrepreneur starting off on her or his journey in the startup world?
First of all, I would say, to young people is, definitely explore the startup world. Do that as early as possible in your life, because that's when you have a lot of energy, a lot of ideas, and you have low amount of risk. You may not be married, you may not have kids, you may not have a mortgage to worry about, you can stay with your parents. So those are things working into your advantage. And so start your startup journey early. If you have a great idea, then pursue that. If you don't, join a startup, get a good experience, and then work on your own idea to see if you can go do a startup. And then, as I said, follow the process that I described in terms of really understanding customer problem, pain points, and testing, with MVPs, etc., before really investing a lot of money into it.
Wonderful. Shirish, on that note, and your advice of start your startup early, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me at such length and sharing your incredible experience of building 2 successful exits and investing in so many different companies. Thank you for talking to me about what goes into building a successful startup and what you look for as an investor. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to be on your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.